All right. So this is Stacy Brady with Missouri Assistive Technology, and we're here for Let's Talk ICT, Remediating Bad PDFs. And I'm introducing our speaker, Kevin Lanahan, and I'm going to let him take it from here.
Ooh, okay. I am going to turn off my screen now because nobody needs to look at me. I'm not that. We just don't need to, and it'll save a little bandwidth. Okay, thank you, Stacy and Missouri Assistive Technology. This is the second part of a series on accessible PDFs. Last month, Lainey Strange did the first part, creating accessible PDFs, and we have a link in the chat for that. Let's see. So this session is about remediating bad PDFs. This is when all of the things that you've learned from all of the other sessions on creating accessible Word documents and then creating accessible PDFs, when you just get something that nobody followed any of that, what do? Because we're government, we're schools, this happens all the time. You've probably got hundreds of old, horrible PDFs. And at some point, you're going to have to fix them. Let's see, let me get the rest of my word. Okay, so let's see, on the agenda. Last month, Lainey covered setting up Acrobat Pro. We're just going to do a real quick overview on that. Then we're going to get into reviewing, kind of a review process for PDFs. And then we're going to do demos, and demos are going to be the bulk of this. And I'm going to have to remember to actually talk while I'm moving things around. Sometimes I get a little into the moment, and so yeah, if you hear me not say anything, just kind of yell at me a little bit and say, hey, take care of that. That would be good. Got a little quote here: so much time and so little to do. Wait a minute, strike that, reverse it. Thank you. 50th anniversary of Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka movie, and it's so appropriate here. It's like, I don't know how we're going to cover all of this in an hour, but we're going to try. Okay, so setting up Acrobat. The first thing is you need Acrobat Pro DC. You can use older versions. They're not as easy to use, but if you do not have Acrobat Pro, you're not going to be able to remediate PDFs successfully. This is not hard. It's not hard to get. I mean, the state has a contract to get Adobe. It's just a matter of someone actually putting in the purchase order and installing it on your machine. So if you don't have Acrobat Pro, that's the first thing you want to do. After you get Acrobat Pro, there's a couple of things that you'll want to do. And again, Lainey went over this in last month's presentation. That's adding content and tags panes in the left sidebar. And let me see if I can get there. So the left sidebar, we have panes. These are called panes. This is the tags pane right here. This is the content pane. There's also a reading order pane that I tend not to use that much, but other people find it useful. You'll want to add the accessibility and prepare forms tools in the right sidebar. So let's go back again, and in the right sidebar, let's see, let's expand that out. Prepare form. We're government, we're schools, we have a lot of forms. Don't put a form online unless you make it fillable and accessible. Because why should someone have to print it out? If they have to print it out to use it, it's not accessible. People should be able to fill forms out on their computer. The other thing is, the other item is accessibility, and add that. That being said, we're not going to use it that much here because what I'm really going to recommend is putting these items up here in your toolbar. And to do that, we go to View, Show Hide, Toolbar Items, and Customize Quick Tools. And so from here, we, here's prepare form if we want that, but we scroll down, here's accessibility. If we look at accessibility, there is the accessibility here, accessibility full check. And to put that in your toolbar, you would click that, hit this little button over here because Adobe doesn't care about your user experience. And it'll get added up here. I've also added the reading order tab because that's incredibly useful as you're going through and editing your PDFs. There's some functions that you can't do without that. So that's useful. The other thing I want to add is this is a make accessible script. And this is an action wizard, make accessible, and you just add that to your toolbar the same way. And then I'll show you how we use these later on in the presentation. So instructions are here. You will have all the power to make accessible PDFs right at your fingertips. So the next step, reviewing PDFs. This is a process. It's kind of like shampooing, rinse, lather, repeat. Run accessibility full check. Fix the errors. Check it again, make sure you got rid of the errors. After you do all that, you still need to do manual tests, manual checking, and that's mostly going to be done in the review tags as you review the tags that are in the document. So as we review, there's a triage that you want to do. You're going to look at these PDFs, and you can tackle these a couple different ways. Depending, what you'll find is that the people who send you PDFs will make the same mistakes or have the same problems all the time. So if you know that something is coming from Joe Blow, oh, he never puts alt text in. Well, in that case, send it back and make him put alt text in. But if Mary never uses headings, it's like, again, if you can't see, if you can't get it fixed in the source document, you'll at least kind of know where to start. So you can either start with the most common errors, which are usually no alt text or headings or maybe some table stuff. You can go with the easiest to fix. And again, that's going to depend on the kind of document you have, what's going to be easiest, or the most important. And, so what's most important? Probably having alt text. The next would be having a good reading order so you can at least read it the way it's presented on the page. But what you really want to do is make sure there's structure in there so the page is navigable. So you have options. You can do, you can develop your own method for this. Let's see, let's go to the next slide. And the most common problems, no document title or language, there's no tags, there's no alt text, lists. We love lists in government. Here's a list of things you can do. Here's a list of things you can't do. Here's a list of of things we found walking along a stream or whatever. Lots of lists. And so many times we don't identify them as lists. So list, when you label something a list, it has a semantic meaning. It means, these are a list of items that are related somehow. If you make it a list, it becomes much more obvious what's going on. Last problem is with tables, either having irregularly shaped tables where one row might have 5 cells and the next one has 6 and the next one has 1. And then not having table headers. So this is just like an HTML, having a th tag to say, this is a heading for the table. Stuff that's in this column or in this row is related to this, this topic. So we'll get into tables in this presentation. Tables are generally evil because nobody really knows how to make them accessible. Word, about the best you can do is make the top row a header row, but that still doesn't make the table accessible. It just makes it less inaccessible. Generally, what we want to do is add a header row and column, and then give a scope to each one of those. So there's a scope of column for anything that's on the top row. And usually in the left column, those are headings as well. And that means anything in this row is associated with this heading. Complex tables require manual repair, which is time consuming and mind numbing. This is why we really want simple tables. One table, one idea, one table. Don't try to mix too many things in a table. So, yay, 15 minutes in, and I'm ready to start the demos. This is awesome. Okay, example number 1, a very simple report from Word. This is one that we just got earlier this year. It is a straight up black and white document. It's got some tables in it. And it passes all the accessibility tests. And it's readable, but not particularly usable. And we'll get into that now. Okay, so the very first thing that we want to do when we get a PDF is run a quick accessibility check on it. That's why it's on your desk. You want to make sure it passes before we go get it online. So we come up here, do an accessibility full check. We can also do that from over here. Have these options. Really the only thing, you should always have 31 to 32 done. The only thing that usually isn't checked is table summaries, because even though it's part of the standard, nobody uses them. And they're inconsistently used. So if we do this, if we run the test, we get in your left sidebar, the accessibility checker. And it goes through a list of things: documents, page content, forms, alt text, tables, lists, and headings. If there's an issue with any one of those, it'll highlight it. So we have an issue with documents. Our title has failed. So why has that failed? If we come over into the document, do a right click, we can get into the document properties and the description. We're missing a title. So we can add title here, because I don't want to type out agricultural land here in Missouri. I'll make a mistake. We'll check that, and then we'll check again. And what do you know? It passed. The other thing you can do, right click, you can fix it. It'll pop up a little dialog box. It'll say all of the items that you can edit from there. So title, various other things. Maybe we'll try that on a different one. The other two things that need to be checked are logical reading order and color contrast. So I'm not going to get much into color contrast right now, but it's super important for people with color blindness, which is what, 8% of men and like, 1% of women. But if you don't have sufficient contrast, they can't necessarily see, they can't read things very easily. So we're going to check the reading order. And the way we want to do this is go into our tags panel. To go into our tags panel, we can see a couple of things right off the bat. There's no headings. We've got a bunch of lists. We've got a table. So we already know that it's not particularly well structured. We're going to need to fix that, but we can check very easily to see if we have things in a good reading order. And that's just highlighting the first element, in this case, the P tag. And you can see that it's outlined in the document here. And if we just arrow down, this will show that, as this will read through in order. This seems to be working pretty well. But we know that there's a couple of issues with it. One, this looks like it should be our heading, our H1, but it's just listed as a paragraph. There's a couple different ways to fix that. And one way is to open your reading order pane, highlight this, and say, that's a heading 1. But when we do that, there we go, it's changed. So that's good. The other way you can do it is to go into properties. You can change it here to anything else that you want. You can also just type directly into here and make that an H1, H2, whatever. Missouri Department of Conservation is a paragraph. That's a paragraph. Oh, this is nothing. This is somebody did a double carriage return instead of using Word to put extra spaces between, say, a list and a paragraph. You can delete these. Just kill it. It won't affect the display, and it'll make for a cleaner document as you go through and try to fix things. So let's look here. We have a list, 1, 2, 3. So, but when we click on that list, we only have one list item. One list item is not a list. So there's a couple different ways to handle this. One, just leave it as it is. Is it hurting anything? No, but when you have a list with one item and then we're going to have another list with one item, not necessarily a great user experience. You can't navigate through the list very easily. The other thing is, most of these have 2 or 3 or 4 items underneath it. If you think about it, aren't those kind of a list as well? You can make a decision here, and maybe you want to edit this and make it just a cleaner document. You can add tags. So here I went to the list item. Here's the list item. In the list item is the list body. I'm going to add a tag, and I'm going to add a new list. And we have 3 items in that list. So these are paragraphs. I'm going to come over here to the properties section. I'm going to make them a list item. And I'm going to drag them under here. Now I've got a nested list. I've got an empty space, an empty paragraph tag. We're going to kill that. And now we have this list item guess what? We can make this actually part of this list. And so if we expand that out, we have a list body. If we're going to add another list, we can put that, we can drag that under the list body. We can highlight our paragraph tags, make them into list items, and drag them in and go on, throughout the document. Do you have to do it? No. Does it make sense as a well-structured document? Yes. Will you have the time to do this? Not always. But with a simple document like this, it may be worthwhile. Let's scroll down a little bit here, and you can see we have item 7 is a table. So tables, as I said, a special brand of hell. We need to check tables. We need to make sure that they are structured properly so a screen reader can interpret them. To do that, let me close that. You'll need to have your reading order tab open. When you do that, and when that's open, you can highlight anything in your table, right click on it, and go to the table editor. That'll show up in the menu. When we do that, we have you should be able to see the cell structure or the table structure pretty well. And here we can see, we have crops, this whole line across. And what I'm doing is just hitting my shift key and hitting each one to highlight it. We can right click and go to table cell properties. These are already tagged as tables, as header cells. And you can tell that because they're a different color. You can also go in and customize these colors if what pink and gray don't work for you. The thing we don't have on this is a scope. We don't have anything that says, oh, these table cells are associated with data in these columns. So we can go to scope, go to data column, click OK. And so everything in a column, so like did not plant, crop, 57.67, but all these numbers are going to be associated with that. Now we want to do the same thing for the items in the leftmost column. And so we'll go to table cell properties. These we're going to scope to row. So each row, all of the cells in there are going to be associated now to two headings. So in this first cell, first data cell under did not plant crop, and the crop is corn, 57.67, it has a number of 57.67, whatever that means. The screen reader is going to be able to know that that data cell is associated with those items, which makes it much easier for anyone using a screen reader to understand what's in the table. If we don't do this, when the table gets read, it's just going to read each line across. So you would hear corn 57.67, 6.91%, 17.79%, and you wouldn't have any context for what those numbers are. Adding that scope takes care of that. So after we do that, anytime we make a change, it's always a good idea to come back to your check accessibility. You can right click anywhere in there and say check again. And it'll go through and just see if anything's been corrected. In this case, we have no new mistakes. So that's a win. I like that. So we're going to scroll down. I'm going to skip the rest of it because, again, you know, whoever created this was very consistent in how they presented their information. But then we get to this table, and this table is a problem. We have a header up here, control methods used in operation, did this achieve results? We have a cell that spans 3 columns, and it's, I guess, a yes, no. We have, I don't know what this is. There's a black cell spanning 3 columns. And I guess because if they didn't use a control method, there would be no results. They just left it blank, but it's awkward. Nevertheless, it's what we have to work with. But right underneath that, we have 6 columns with a heading of yes, no, don't know, and yes, no, and don't know. So we have a complex table, and that's no fun. So we're going to kind of check the table out and see what we have as far as headings and how accessible it is. Okay, so I'm going to right click, go to the table editor. So we have, you know, this kind of pinkish background on the top row and the first column. So we can be pretty sure that those are headings, but we're going to go through and check each one of those. We're going to shift and then just click on those and go to table cell properties. And yep, sure enough, they're headers. We can go ahead and associate those with a column, but it's really not going to be that useful. We have no control. We have a blank. We have electric fence, you know, with various methods of control. We can go ahead and check those and make sure those are scoped to row, just because it's a good habit to be in. But then we have these yes, no, don't knows in the 3rd row. And so those are obviously a heading because they deal with the content below. So we can go to table cell, say those are a heading. We can associate them with a column. But again, you know, having those associations, it's a little confusing. A couple other things to check. Table cell properties for this cell that spans 3 columns. This says it only spans 1 column. We probably want to make sure that spans 3. We'll get a little warning, we'll be okay. We'll do the same thing on the next column, spans 3 columns, gives us a nice warning. Go back to accessibility, whoops, and do a check. And we haven't screwed anything up, so this is awesome. Now, Acrobat is saying it doesn't find a real problem with this table, which is surprising since, you know, we had kind of an odd cell structure. If we come over here and look at the table, you know, you can kind of see here's all the cells. We're looking good there. But what we're going to need to do to have the data in the lower, the body of the data make sense, we're going to have to associate each cell to each heading that we use. I'm going to do one just to show you why you never want to have a complex table. So we're going to go back to our table editor. We're going to pick the first cell, which 31.13%. Going to right click on that and hit table cell properties. So it's a data cell. Oops, got ahead of myself. Before we do that, right click. We've added heading cells. Let's auto generate header cell IDs. This is just going to create a relatively easy way for us to associate this cell with a heading. Now we can go into the table cell properties. And I'm going to drag this off to this, drag the table cell properties window off to the side. We're going to add associated header cell IDs. And so for this first column, we want electric fence. So we're going to go down here and find electric fence. The way these are coded, row number and column number, and then the first few letters of the text in there. We're going to hit electric. We also want used in operation, which is going to be row 1, column 2. So we can scroll down till we find row 1, column 2, used in, say yes. And then we also want to use this used in operations, this yes column, which is row 3, column 2. So we're going to scroll down here to row 3, column 2. Yes, boom. Okay. So that table or that cell is now associated with the headings. You have to do this for every single cell. There's not, I'm sorry, I haven't found an automated way to do it. And that's your biggest argument from what an accessibility from a PDF rehabber for never having a complex table. This will take an hour, even if you are particularly adept at it. You know, we can go through the rest of it, but you know, it's all pretty much the same. You know, once you just go through and repeat the steps for each item, you're going to have an accessible document. We look down here at this table, you can tell this is pretty much a simple table. And if we right click on it, we know we just have to add headings and then we should be fine. But again, it takes practice and but you know, after a week of making your PDFs accessible, you're going to be okay. Let's go on to the next example. And these are design documents. So they might be from InDesign. If you're really unlucky, it'll be from Microsoft Publisher. I haven't had good success making anything from Publisher accessible easily. Depending on who designed them, they may be tagged. At Conservation, about what, 8 years ago, we got some training from a company called pubcom.com, based out in Maryland. They do online training and they will teach your InDesign users how to make their documents accessible. Since we've done that, the amount of time it takes for us to get a design document online has gone from days to minutes. There's sometimes I have to actually look for things to fix just so I feel like I'm still necessary. But it's also taken 8 years for us to get here. So it is possible if you have people in your organization using InDesign or Publisher to, or Quark or any other design tool to make accessible documents. So let's go back to our document, and we're going to go to something that a lot of you probably have in your repertoire, the brochure. This is a threefold brochure. It's highly structured. You know, we have something that's obviously a title. We have some design stuff. You know, here's a map, and then we have text, which is also reasonably well structured. You know, this is a heading. Bird watching, hiking, hunting may be, you know, you could think of that as a list, but at the very least a paragraph. We have a list, we have a subheading. So it's visually, this is structured. So we just need to check to make sure that it actually is. So again, the first thing we're going to do, accessibility full check. We've got 3 issues. What do you know? The title has failed. Let's right click on that and say fix. And this is, if you right click and ask to fix, this is the information that you get. You can uncheck this and say cold water CA brochure. Actually, it would just say cold water conservation area, but author, you know, if there's an author, if you want keywords, you can add all of those here. What do you know? This passes now. Page content, there's one issue, and that's a tab order has failed. And it's all over the page. Generally, you just right click, say fix, and it says, hey, we changed everything, it should be fine. Pro tip, it's not. But again, we're going to fix that. We also have alt text. And so if we click down, figure 1, you know, this will go through and highlight everything. One thing I like to do is click through a couple of them to see what is actually highlighted. So if we look here, figure 1, figure 2, figure 3 are all centered on this map. And then we skip down into another part of the document. So to make this accessible, we're going to right click on figure 1 and say fix. And we're going to give this a description. It's a county map of Missouri. The area is in the southeast. And again, I'm using abbreviated text. You can describe that a little bit better. But then when we get to the next image, which is maybe a bordering box around here, hard to say, we can just say that's decorative. And it's the same thing for this little triangle in the map that's showing up as a separate image. Make that an artifact. If you have collages, you know, like, oh, here's a you know, bunch of, you know, pictures of kids on a school outing, or you know, examples of people doing something, and it's done sort of in a mural style, but it's all showing up here as separate images. Pick one image, put alt text on it, and just artifact the rest. Easy way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and say save and close. When we do that, you can see that those 3 issues dropped out. The rest of them kind of an exercise. Although we can go ahead and look at some of these. You know, we've got looks like an image of some grass. We have MDC logo. We have more images of grass. So, you know, figure 1, that obviously that doesn't really have any meaning. We can make that decorative. Second item is our logo. When you have a logo, the alt text is usually just the organization or the thing that the logo represents. So in this case, it would be Missouri Department of Conservation. Go to the next one, again, just more decorative text. Again, we're going to save and close that. It looks like this boilerplate language is actually an image of text. It's like, well, that's odd, although it could just be a text box that has text in it. And then this, I don't know what this last one is, and we're not going to worry about it just yet. Well, actually, one thing we can do is go in and find it in the tags panel. So here it's this little line. We don't really need that. We can mark that as a change tag to artifact. We can do that by going all the way down to the figure. We get down to the last element, in this case, a path, and just say change that to an artifact. And boom, that's an artifact. But let's take a look at this other one. This thing. It's like we have a bunch of text within it, and it seems like that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it seems like that should just be text. So we can look here, figure, we have a section, it's got all this text in it. So this is actually text, and it's in a paragraph. For some reason, it's in a figure. We can just pull this right out of the figure and just make it a paragraph. And now we have actual text, and it's outside of that figure. Playing with the tags, you can move things around. It doesn't affect how it looks on the screen. The only time that it might affect how something appears on the screen is when you have like layers of like text, and then there's drop shadow on a text or something. Depending on how the document was created, you may lose some of that. So you have to be very careful when you're manipulating these things directly. If we go back here and check again, let's see. We have that showing the tags panel. Figure. Okay, so these two figures are showing up. The way we're going to get rid of those, if you go up to your document, right click, delete empty tags, boom, those disappear. When those disappear, when we check again, then that disappears as well. We have a couple other things, alternate text failed. And oh, what do you know? These are the items that we artifacted through the accessibility checker, and they have provided unreliable results. So let's show those in the content panel, and you can see, we have this figure. We can right click that, create an artifact. That'll disappear. We can do the same thing for that one. Create artifact, disappear. Check again. Yay, that's all done. So the only thing left to do, we've got our big rocks out of the way, is check our reading order. And so we'll just go here. We have a paragraph, cold water. Cold water should be an H1, right? So we're just going to go in and change that. For some reason, the conservation area text doesn't show up in the proper place. Oh, that's down here. We can grab the span, pull that up. Now our H1 is going to be cold water conservation area. Boom, everything's nice and compact. We can find our figures. We can put those in the right reading order as well. So we drag that under the H1. Have this Missouri Department of Conservation. Let's see. So we can drag that up here as well. And now we have this section, and we can look and see that recreational opportunity. Yes, that's not a H2. Let's make it an H2. We can do it that way. The other thing we can do, let's see if I can undo that. I don't know that I can. The other thing you can do, if you have a large document that has tags like that in it. So here we have section title is what this paragraph is. There is a thing called role map that you can edit. This is a super powerful tool. You can see here section title is mapped to read as a paragraph. We can take that, change it, and say, no, every time I see a section title, I want that to be an H2. And then that should change every place. In this case, we only have the one heading 2. Well, I guess that should be a heading 3. We only have the one. But if you have a large document, this will cascade those changes throughout your document. So it's super powerful. Little something else to look at. We have these dots here. Dots mean there's a list, but this is not a list. So we would, again, do the same thing we did before, and that's right click, add a tag, add a list, move those in under the list and change them to list items. Again, adding structure to it. The next item, this is something that I guess we worked with the Department of Agriculture. They gave it to us, probably done in InDesign. It has no tags. It's like, oh, that's bad. What it does have, though, is if we look in the Content tab, we can see that there's text in here. It's not just an image. So it's not a scan exactly. It's got content in it. We can do a couple of things with this. If we go to the reading order panel, we can begin to highlight things and give them tags. The easier thing, I think, in this case is going to be to use our Make Accessible button. And it's going to walk us through a little dialogue. It starts in the sidebar. So start. Okay, we've got a description. Let's, we don't want it to be cold water CA. It seems to remember the one before. Rabbit disease. I mean, we would actually use the whole actual title as the title there. Then it's going to go through and scan the document and look for text. In this case, most of this is already text, so it has an easy job to do. It's always going to ask if it's a form. This is where, if you do have a form, you can have it detect the fields and then have it associate with bits of content. But in this case, no, we can skip this step. We'll set a reading language of English. If you have documents in Spanish or Bosnian or Russian or anything else, you can change that there. Now it's going to look for alt text, and it's got a bunch of alt text. So, we can go through and find those items. And it turns out, yeah, we've got the banner. So agriculture, MDA, MDC, rabbit. Save and close. Now it's going to check for accessibility, and look at that. That looks kind of clean. It's not seeing any big errors, but we know that there's some errors in there. So let's go take a look. Very first thing, okay, is the tag. Second, we have something called part. Again, not a big deal. We have an H1, rabbit hemorrhagic fever, so Adobe recognized that. Section 2, wild rabbits. Okay, it's a H1. I'm not quite sure why. I guess rabbit hemorrhagic disease virus 2 in wild rabbits. I guess we can make it, we can consider it an H1. We have paragraphs. And for some reason, this has identified a lot of these items as multiple paragraphs. So we can change that really easily by pulling up our reading order panel and just highlight and click to make that a paragraph. Same thing here. We've got, and you just go through until your document makes sense. All the paragraphs are paragraphs, everything looks good. If we have sections like guidelines for wild rabbits, that should be an H2. Look at that, it recognized an H2. So apart from having paragraphs broken up, this is in pretty good shape. So again, it's structured, it has text, this is good. What happens when you get a scan? Scans are evil, but some of our documents are very old, and they were scanned 10 years ago, and nobody's ever bothered to to revise them and give a new PDF. So this is a document that I actually ended up saving this PDF as an image and then saving the image as a PDF to strip out everything. But it's essentially what you would get with a scan. We have no tags available. If we look at content, all we have is an image on each page. It's like, so we have like nothing to work with here. So obviously what we're going to do is what we did before. We're going to get that make accessible PDF. We'll start, we're going to add some text. We're going to add a title rather. We're going to have it scan and try to do some OCR. Is this a form? If it was a form, we would add fields, but it's not. So we're going to get rid of that, set the reading language. And we'll do alt text. And I'm going to skip through this because you've seen how to go through and do that. And then, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Save and close. There we go. And so issues, well, we have a title, so we'll always need to check reading order and color contrast. Alternate text, we know we have to change all of the images. Headings, we have an issue, and this is something we hadn't seen before, but appropriate nesting has failed. If we look at item 1, we've got a item down here. If we right click on that, show in the tags panel, we can go to our tags, which you can see now the document's entirely tagged, and this is an H3. Looking at the document, this managing for large bluegill, looks like that should be an H1. AquaGuide, this AquaGuide bit is showing up as an image. I'm not going to mess with that right now, but AquaGuide managing for large bluegill would be a meaningful H1 tag for this.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
It's Stacy. We've got about 5 minutes left.
I know. And I think, yeah, we can take questions and kind of go over anything. I know I ran through this pretty fast. But the idea is that you can do almost anything. You can rearrange, you can rename, you can change things without affecting how the PDF looks, but making it more accessible. So yeah, I mean, I can stop and take questions.
Do we have any questions from anyone? If you do, go ahead and unmute.
I think they're all just in stunned silence. Let me go through these. One thing with the scanned documents, you may not be able to make them accessible. A lot of times it's a copy of a copy of a copy, and the print is so blurry that you can't get a good OCR on it. And sometimes you just have to start it all over again. So this is a process that takes a while to learn, and it takes a lot of practice. One thing that I was able to do at conservation was we had literally thousands of PDFs. The ones that did not need to be PDFs, I converted to HTML, and we were able to get rid of them. And then just as new PDFs came in, revisions and new PDFs, we remediated them before they went online, even if it took us a week. And now we have very few unremediated PDFs. Not all of them are accessible. There's always issues, but it can be done, and it just takes time and effort. So if you're starting down this journey, if you have questions, email me, send me a sample and email me, and we can discuss, strategies for tackling some of your gnarly documents.
Okay, any last minute questions for Kevin? Go ahead. And Kevin, I see that you have posted on your slide that your email address and your Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Yep, feel free. Reach out and happy to help. Happy to help anybody in Missouri. If someone's picking this up on YouTube from out of state, it's like, yeah, got to think twice about that. But yeah, for anyone in a school district or in a government agency, we're all fighting the same battle. I will be happy to help.
All right, well, I think we'll go ahead and close it up. And again, if you need to reach Kevin, his email is kevin.lanahan@mdc.mo.gov, or you can reach him on Twitter at Kevin Lanahan. And all right, I heard somebody just a moment ago. We'll go ahead and close it up.
Thanks, everybody.